Hello, my lovely death disciples. You may have noticed I'm not in an entirely good mood as of right now. It has actually been because of the recent events that revolve around the CPAC rally, and most especially on the way that the stage was framed, in a sense, to represent a Nazi symbol. And that Nazi symbol was what I would consider the bastardization of the Othalla rune from the Elder Futhark runic language. So, if you don't know what I am talking about in any sense or form, the Othalla rune is one of the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark language of the old Nordic homeland of Scandinavia. It has been held sacred for religious reasons because in many tales, it was considered that Odin had sacrificed his eye into the well of knowledge as he hung himself from the Yggdrasil tree for 9 days without water, without food. And it was from this sacrifice that he had discovered the Elder Futhark Runes and had practiced them along with Freya, who is also another being that has held the Elder Futhark Runes to be sacred within the Old Nordic pantheon. And the ones who originally held it before were the three Norn sisters who controlled the fate of everything. They measured it, they weaved it, and they also cut it, similar to the, well, anyway, that's kind of getting off topic, but you understand how it is sacred, the Elder Futhark runes, in the old Scandinavian Nordic culture and religion of the Asatru. The Othalla rune specifically has been used in, as well as many other Asatru symbols have been used during World War II by the German Reich as a way of trying to be able to use those symbols for the sake of showing off Aryan superiority, that they were blessed in some way to be seen as the superior race. And the same was similarly done to the Sanskrit symbol for the sun, which was the swastika, as it was also modified in order to show off the Aryan superiority over everyone else. And of course, we see this amongst a lot of white supremacists, where they have used the original Nazi bastardization of these other cultural symbols to be used for their own sake and for their own meaning, to exclude everyone else and to show white supremacy over everyone else. Now, I want to talk about specifically the Othalla rune, because that is the center of this topic. And I wanted to mention the fact that how it was this, as well as many other Asatru symbols, that made it personal for me. I was offended by the other symbols that the Nazis bastardized because those were not their symbols. They took someone else's symbols and basically bastardized them, appropriated them for their own personal uses, for their own personal meaning, instead of remembering that the original intent was not for those specific reasons, it was for another culture's specific reasons. But for this video, I'm going to be talking about the original symbolism of the Othalla rune specifically. Of course, we see other symbols that I, of course, want to be able to talk about as well, such as Mjolnir, which is obviously meant to be Thor's hammer, and how white supremacists use that as their own strength, when originally Thor was not necessarily about strength. He is a god of strength and a god of war, but he is also a god of protecting humans. And even though it was specifically for the Nordic people, Thor was the protector of humanity, and the protector of Middenheim, which means he is the protector of all humans, regardless of where they came from. He offers his blessings of war to those who follow him, of course, but in the end, he is the protector of humanity. And then we also have the, well, you get what I mean. But specifically for the Othalla rune is meant to be held sacred because the original meaning was, well, I mean, all of them are sacred, but the original meaning of Othalla is one that rings extremely important for me, and I would assume extremely important for a lot of people, especially neo-pagans, for the sake that it means originally homeland. It also means wealth or possession, But when it is referred to as wealth or possession, it means that it is a wealth that cannot be bought or sold. It has no monetary value, but it has more of a spiritual value. For example, it is your homeland, and it is the people that make up the blessings of that homeland, your family, your friends, your loved ones, anyone you care about deeply. And for me, it rings very important because it is the homeland that I came from, the land that my ancestors came from, the beliefs that they held in that homeland, and the path that I follow as of right now, that I am following the religious path that my ancestors held dear. And obviously, when I saw the Othalla rune being used for causes like this, and now that I am following the path of my old Nordic ancestors, it hits me on a personal level as of right now, because these are the symbols that my ancestors held sacred, and that I now hold sacred, because I am now following the old path that my ancestors took before me. And to be... Now, if you are taking, like, say, a basic research of the rune, in a sense it is easy to see how white supremacists, or people who might be following white supremacy under the guise of conservative patriotism, might be using the Othalla rune, because they would see, oh, it means homeland, therefore it means my country, and I value my country. But the problem with that is that conservative patriotism, or white supremacy, has had quite a history of preventing people from being able to see this country as their homeland. And it is saying, I value my country and what it believes, but at the same time, I'm not going to be doing anything to give other people that same sense, because it is my country, and I'm going to force that it is my country. Now, some people might obviously not intend it, because they would be under the guise of colorblind racism, which it might be a topic for another video in and of itself, but basically it is the excuse of saying, this is my homeland, so therefore it is easy for me to understand this rune. And to that I say, no. You aren't understanding what the rune is supposed to mean, because not only is it supposed to be just your homeland, it is your home, yes, but this is also a country where other people also want to see it as their home, but they don't actually see it as their home because they are not being welcomed into this homeland that they want to make into their home. And it is also further insulting when put in the context that this was not originally the homeland of Americans. This was the homeland of many Native American peoples who it was their home, but now it is no longer their home because they are treated as a conquered people. They are treated as not worthy of the homeland that they came from, and that it is only worthy for the people that conquered this land, and now it is settled by the people who conquered it. And the fact that it would probably be more, well, it's difficult for me to be able to process this, if I'm being perfectly honest, because it's a misunderstanding of what the Othalla rune really means, and it is being held by people who do not even understand or do not even believe in what the sacredness of the Elder Futhark Runes actually truly mean. They are simply just using it as a costume. It is a decoration. It is appropriation because, hey, it looks cool. But that's not what cultural importance means. Just because it looks cool is not the reason why it is seen as important. The reason it is important is because of the symbolism, what it means for that culture. And the fact that they are using it for their own purposes, to bastardize the meaning for their own purposes, rather than understanding why it was important in the first place, what made it important in the first place, and why is it part of their culture in the first place, or the fact that it is from their culture. It is insulting, really, that they would use it for their own purposes, for their own ends, rather than understanding that this is what was held important to this specific group of people, to this specific culture. Because they're not using it to honor the culture of the Nordic people in the past. They're not using it to understand the Nordic people, or the Nordic faith, or the Elder Futhark in general. They're not using it as a form of understanding it. They're using it because it holds a specific purpose to them. It holds the purpose of, I'm going to bastardize this so that it could work for my own political meanings, instead of understanding that this is not for a political meaning. It is meant to symbolize what is important to you. That is literally what the Othalla rune is meant to mean. What is important to you. It is not meant for a political message. It is meant to say, this is what I value. This is what I value in the sake of what I hold dear to my home, my family, my friends, my loved ones, etc. It is not meant to be used to enforce your idea of, hey, this is my home and you're not allowed to see it as your home, which is, I'm sorry if you don't necessarily see it that way, but that is what has been used for conservative patriotism, especially in the face of people who have not been able to see it as their home. Whether you acknowledge the racism that has occurred and is still occurring in this country, the reality is that it is still here. And these runes that have been bastardized for these groups, this is where I take offense, because you are not honoring what these runes mean. You are taking these runes and using it for your own purposes, instead of understanding the importance that these runes held. If you actually valued these runes or these symbols, you would not be taking them for your own uses. You would be understanding where they came from and what they mean. You would not be using them as slogans or symbols for a political message. You would actually be understanding that these came from a different group of people. These came from a people that you are stealing from. These runes are sacred to the Asatru. They are sacred to the Old Nordic people. They are sacred to the history of the people of Scandinavia. And you are using them for your own political gains and your own political message, and I do not accept that. I will not accept that, even by people who say they are of the Asatru faith. I will not accept that, because you are not using those runes for what was originally meant, to remind you of where you came from, to remind you of your old homeland, to remind you that there are people around you that you value, to remind you of the importance of the spiritual value that people and your homeland remind you of. I do not accept that in any way, shape, or form being used for a political message that you do not even understand in the slightest. And it is because of this that it greatly offends me when I see these runes being used just as a form of decoration for a political message that the rune was not even meant for. I really needed to mention this, and I needed to make it clear that whenever you see a Nazi symbol that resembles the Elder Futhark runes or the Asatru symbols, that I want to remind people that there was an original meaning for those symbols, or the Sanskrit meaning of the sun, which is the swastika. That there was an original meaning before those Nazi fuckers decided to culturally appropriate these symbols for their own political gain to mean something that it wasn't. I am sick and tired of having to see these symbols and being reminded about how these symbols that were meant for another culture to remind them of something different, of the importance that they originally held, and now it's being used for political slogans that have nothing to do with their original meaning. Only the basic meaning. And it infuriates me to see it being used for that sense. And as I am a Norse pagan, of course, I take it personally when I see the Norse runes, when I see the Elder Futhark runes or the Nordic symbols being used for a political message that it was never intended for. I am offended as well, and I understand the feeling when this happens to other cultures, and I want it to stop entirely. The cultural appropriation of other people's symbols, of other people's culture, it should stop entirely. And the way that these symbols and these meanings have been bastardized for some political message, I will never accept. And I will always stand against those. And if there is something that I'm missing, do remind us. Remind all of us, because we need to know what is going on with these symbols so that we can remember what they originally mean. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't remember what these symbols have been used for these political causes as well. We do have to remember how these symbols have been bastardized and who bastardized them. Because this sort of treatment for these symbols should be put to a stop. Entirely. But we also need to remember how it happened as well. So that is basically what I have to say, and I will not stop saying it. I will forever be infuriated. My rage at these people will not be silenced. I will not stop being enraged by how these people decided to bastardize the meaning of the symbols of my people's culture, of my ancestors' culture, and my religion's culture. My religion's meaning. The moment you decide to try and use my people's meaning for something that it was never intended to do in the first place, keep in mind you have made my shit list. And it will not come off until you understand what it is that you have done wrong with those symbols. So if you understand that, make perfectly clear what it is that these symbols mean, that you respect what these symbols mean, because they are not meant for your political gain. They are a people's representation of what they hold dear and of what they value. No matter who it is, you do not get to bastardize the meaning for what your personal gains want. The Othalla rune, I will repeat what it means. It is what you hold to spiritual value. It is what you hope. It is the family you hold. They are the friends you make. The people you hold dear and close to your heart. And of course, to remember where you came from. To remember the place that you value and hold. It is not meant for you to try and make some political slogan about how you think your country is changing too much. Or how there are things in your country you do not like. So I will go ahead and make a political slogan about it. It is not for that. And it should never be for that. So if that is the intention you want to make, you could go fuck yourself. And I will constantly be there to remind you that these symbols and these cultural meanings and ties are not for you to use for your selfish means. That is all I have to say. And if you have disagreements, feel free to make them. But do keep in mind that I will take these kinds of things personally because they are of my ancestors. And they are also and the symbols and cultural ties of other people's cultures, they are of other people's ancestors. And for you to try and bastardize them, don't think I will not be heated about this, because these are important things to keep in mind. These are not things for other people to use. That is all I have to say. And I will stop myself, because at this point I will probably be repeating myself, but it cannot stop being repeated. These are important. I have stated my reasons why they are important. And it cannot be iterated enough why this is important. So with that, I will be ending this video. Thank you for at least listening to what I had to say. I appreciate that. From the bottom of my heart. And I hope you are able to understand why it is I am infuriated.